Awesome. Thanks for coming on again, Paul. This is
Yeah.
the second time in only like 4 episodes. So you're the most consistent person I get to talk to. Um, but just to reintroduce you so we don't have to do the whole thing again. Paul is a senior front-end engineer at GitLab, one of my mentors and good friends. And we had a conversation about what we were going to do last time, and we decided to do code reviews, but you expressed interest in talking about motivation as an engineer or just a person in general. So I don't have any questions, so we're just gonna riff on this. And yeah.
Yeah. It's right before we hopped on, you and I chuckled to each other that neither of us were feeling very motivated today. So we're in the prime condition to leave an audience feeling inspired and motivated. But I think it's important to highlight that motivation and is you're not going to feel it every day.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, when we talk about motivation and you knowing your target audience that you care about growing, what is a motivation for? Like what do you think is be interesting to explore? Motivation for being a software engineer day to day, a motivation just for any kind of professional work that you find yourself doing that has its ups and downs. And
Yeah, let's go with the software engineer day to day, and then that'll probably get us into high level general motivation, and then we can kind of work between those.
yeah. So the one thing that with software, and I think I mentioned this before, but I used to teach at a software boot camp, and that was absolutely amazing experience for me, because you can really see people, in some regard, this is overstating it, but they're kind of changing their lives. They're
Yeah.
completely shifting careers, and you spend a lot of your time on your career. So there's an argument to be made that they're and a life change, and you get to help them out and being successful there. Um, Hearing people at the very beginning of this process and the motivations for why they would take time to learn how to program uh, and make this career change, you hear a lot of stuff. I'd like to hear some of the stuff you've heard. I'd like to hear some of the stuff you've heard, but things that come to mind are, want to make more money.
Yeah.
Or I hate my current job, or like I just, I gotta do something else. In your experience, because I think you also did some mentoring and teaching like that. What are some of the motivators that stick out to you?
That's a really good question. So I went to a boot camp as well. And so I was in it. I was like in the situation, and I can talk about my motivations. And that's another story. But it usually is about money and like getting away from hating their current situation. And when I have mentored people or talked to people about motivation into getting into front-end engineering, I personally don't care what your motivation is, but I really try and stray people away from it if money is your only motivation. Just because, I'm not trying to make software engineering sound more difficult than it is, but like it's kind of like being a cerebral athlete sometimes, where it's so variant in your emotions, in your day, how you're feeling. And if your only motivation is money, it's too hard to stay in it when you need to be in it. So that's what I try and tell people. And anything else, I think, is if you just want to explore something new, you want to get away from a bad situation, etc. So that's usually what I say and what I've heard.
I think that's an interesting thing too. Like seems to be we talk to college students, like that's the common motivator is, why are you going down this path? Well, I want to get my business degree because I want to be the boss and make lots of money. Or like that's a common motivator, and it's legit. And lots of people aren't in a situation where they can really think about anything else. Lots of people do need like, hey, support, family members and other things. Hey, we gotta make ends meet.
Right.
But hopefully we can all accept and have had somewhat of a life experience that, man, money is not the main objective.
Right.
Um, and it's a necessity, but there's something way sweeter. And my experience with mentoring students in these boot camps, what I was so excited for them was not that getting into software. I wasn't excited about now you're going to make more money, because that may not be the case.
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited because I believe software engineering is such a rewarding activity because
Mm-hmm.
not all the time, but in most organizations, and it really depends on the organization can destroy this, but it can be a really rewarding activity because you get to be creative, you get to do things to help people, you get to work as a team. There's so many things that just are personally fulfilling with
Right.
how I spend my time day to day, that I was excited for that person's day-to-day life has a chance to, I'm looking forward to doing this.
Right.
And man, it was so rewarding when I could see they're having fun solving their problems. And that's the key. And so I didn't have a good language for this until I was watching videos by a computer science professor in, I think, like South Wales or something, somewhere in the southern hemisphere. Um, and I really, really enjoyed. His name's Richard Buckland. And I will send you a video for the one where he actually dives. I'll send you a link so you can add it to the show notes or something of where he dives into this. But he was talking to his students about motivation, and he without even watching this, you're motivated because he's so much fun. He's very dynamic. You can just tell he loves what he's doing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
infectious. And you start to love the problems you're learning to solve, and and you're having fun, and it's challenging, but it's fun. But he talked about extrinsic and intrinsic motivations, and the goal is you want to find what intrinsically motivates you. And intrinsic means whatever happens, whether I'm getting paid 40K or 140K, that's an extrinsic thing.
Mm-hmm.
What about my day to day am I gonna wake up and be excited about? And
Right.
just because I'm excited because this is the way I'm bent and I like to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too, is not everyone's bent to be a software engineer. It may pay well, it may be a really hot job, but you're gonna want to feel like jumping out a window if you don't like to code.
Right.
Uh,
Or be at a computer all day, or or like
yeah,
know
exactly.
how to unblock yourself creatively, like sitting in front of a computer, and sometimes you just need to go for a walk, and like knowing that about yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, some people are for their job, they may be more intrinsically motivated to I don't want to think a lot. I want to have, process that I do. I'm gonna have someone that's being there to help me out, and like um and that just may be where they're at.
Mhm.
But so I think the act of software engineering has so much possibility to be intrinsically motivating because it is rewarding. You get to be creative, you get to do hard problem solving, you get to work with people. These are some of the things I truly love coding. Like whatever I was going to do, this is something I do on the side for fun because it's something I enjoy doing. And I feel incredibly privileged that I got to discover that. I only discovered this because I happened to take a computer science class
Mhm.
in school. And I think that I think that software engineering has enough elements that it can be intrinsically motivating for a large number of people. It's not like I think babies are born with a bent towards software engineering, or like your
Yeah.
personality is just like, but I think that there's something about it that um, that can excite you. And for anyone listening, I would my biggest recommendation is, you got to make ends meet. But if you're not intrinsically motivated about what you're doing day to day, either A, let's try to find the things that can intrinsically motivate you. And I want to dive into that. Or B, um, find how you are bent. Sometimes you can't solve that. And sometimes it is just like, I don't want to spend my life doing this. I don't want to spend my time.
Right.
Your time is so valuable. And that's when you're not intrinsically motivated, all the existential dread starts to
Yeah.
come up.
Totally.
Yeah.
How do you feel like, so I did in college and high school, I did not excel in difficult math and science classes. And then I studied business, and then I gravitated towards software engineering because it was so difficult. I just have this like masochism bone that I'm like, I just like doing things that are difficult.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, now we're sitting and talking to each other, which is kind of cool. Let's say you're intrinsically motivated and extrinsically motivated at your job, but they're going to ebb and flow depending on your current situation, how much experience you get. So what's something you do when you find yourself like being intrinsically demotivated to get back to feeling good? Like, do you contribute to open source? Do you work on a personal project?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So I think for me, there's times where I can be pretty demotivated because things didn't work out the way that I expected, or maybe I caused a user regression and that was discouraging. Or for me, I find that I'm personally can get remotivated. This is me personally. When I shut off all of Slack, email, and everything, I just go back to the code and I just try to do something I know I can do and try to make something better, or just going back to the code, solving problems is always so much fun for me. So if for work, that's something I'll do. If I'm finding that I'm losing some motivation, usually that correlates with I've been spending less time away from the code. At the same time, if I'm not spending a lot of time synchronously with people, I'll get personally demotivated, because asynchronously, we're just communicating over issues and emails and stuff. We're not connecting. And whatever your role is, if you're working in a team, man, there's something so nice with this huge opportunity to make the people around you's day and lives just a little better. And that's personally rewarding for me, is to just connect with others, and I'm thankful for those opportunities too. But it does take a moment. I do have to kind of step back, and I have to be self-reflective enough to catch
Right.
all these extrinsic things are really bothering me. Maybe I haven't gotten a raise in X amount of time, and that's bugging me because whatever reason. And it does take me going back and being like, but wait, where was I at 2 years from now? Like I'm making more money now, so extrinsically I should be fine. Is this? It does. You do have to kind of catch yourself. Okay, I'm in this cycle. I got to go back.
Right.
And what is the extrinsic things are bothering me that I really should be bothered about, or not? But if I was going to summarize this, for me, it does take knowing what intrinsically motivates me, and then I'm just going to focus. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to try to revitalize myself with that. But one huge subset of that is small wins. For me, small wins are huge. So I remember when I was a teenager doing this like student leadership like conference thing, and one of the things they took away, one of the leadership principles that they did. I don't know if this is in highly 10 habits of highly effective people, is that, or 7 habits of highly effective people?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is in there or not. Have you ever heard the phrase of swallow the big frog first? you ever heard that phrase?
Yeah. Yeah. Ben Hardy, it's like his PhD in psychology. I subscribe to his newsletter.
Okay.
And he talks about, yeah.
So if you have to swallow frogs, it says swallow the big frog first. And I think in that scenario, maybe swallowing frogs, that makes sense. For me, doing tasks,
Mm-hmm.
I find doing the small task first, getting a win off of that, and like building off of the small tasks
Totally.
way more motivating for me.
Right. Because you'll carry the momentum through to the next thing and the next thing instead of, yeah. Because if you're like the frog being like the thing you don't want to do, or like the most important thing, depending on how you look at it. But if you're demotivated, the most important thing is probably daunting or big. So it's like maybe you can like swallow the leg of the frog, of the big frog, like
Yeah, it's an interesting analogy, and I might have misinterpreted it because it kind of haunted me of like I've got all this stuff to do. I guess I should do the big one. And for me, and sometimes that big one is big because I really don't want to do it.
Right.
But for me, I have noticed, and sometimes I don't want to do it because I don't know if I can do it. And sometimes I don't want to do it because uh I don't know how to do it, or like my mind is scared a little bit of the problem.
Sure.
For me, I notice when I come in with a different mindset of having some small wins behind me, I'm not getting arrogant or anything, but it's just that confidence building.
Yeah.
I'm able to take that big problem way different.
Totally.
And but I don't know how that translates. And I imagine that that's not all the case. You can't do it, but that's a little thing I'll do if I have a whole huge bunch of reviews to review. I'll do some small ones and then I'll do the big one just because it gets me on momentum, and that's for me personally super helpful. But I think that advice is mainly for if you find that you're in your element, you're doing the work that is rewarding to you, but you just things aren't always going to feel great, and you need a little boost. Finding small wins is super helpful. Sometimes those may be outside your organization. So you did talk about contributing to open source. Sometimes that may not, because there's not many open source projects that are very, have healthy maintainer activity and like that are easy to pick up. Like sometimes you may not be expecting a small win. But maybe you're like, oh, I've always wanted to build this thing, or just like doing the fun thing, like just doing something fun related to the work. So it's like sometimes personally, I'm like, I've always wanted to do this task that we've never had time to schedule for. I'm just going to do this fun thing because, and by fun, maybe this is a weird way I'm bent, but some of my work I do find really fun. But I'm just going to focus on the fun bits.
And some days fun changes, right? Like some days fun is like I got 3 things done instead of half a thing done. Like that's fun, right?
Now I want to ask you a question. So I'm extroverted, and so for me, there was one moment in my career where every day showing up to work was so difficult because I was so far removed from code. We weren't even allowed or able to code yet. Like we were just, it was absolutely bonkers the way it was organized, and it was really discouraging. But the one bit of intrinsic motivation that kept me going, even though I had a lot of intrinsic demotivation, was connecting to my peers that were also feeling really lame about the situation. We'd go on walks and they would just vent, and I would just, be there to listen to them, and we'd have some camaraderie about how lame the situation is, and but we talked about just encouraging each other, not even solving each other's problems, but connecting with other people is motivating for me. And I am an extrovert. I don't know, are you extrovert? On the personality scale, are you more extroverted or introverted, or are you
I
kind
don't
of in the
know.
middle?
I feel like I'm introverted, but I like to be by myself. But I like what you said, where it's like sometimes you feel, we're getting deep now. Sometimes you feel alone in the situation and it's suckery, that it's like isolating, And so maybe being like with someone you work with or whatever, like, hey, this feels weird. Um, how do you feel about it? And then maybe people feel the same way, or maybe you're doing something completely different that's making you feel this way.
Yeah.
But in terms of going back to your question, personality, I, I've heard personality be defined in different ways. I get energy from being around people, but then I get exhausted and I just want to be by
Yeah.
myself.
I totally know what you mean. I on the actual personality test, I'm like close to the middle, but definitely fall in the extroverted. In the
Mm.
workplace, I'm highly extroverted. It's like
That's yeah.
I
I think I'm similar. Like, yeah, personally, like I like being by myself, but in work environments, yeah, that's a really good point.
so you and I might not be the most qualified people for this question, but I was wanting to, for me, connecting with others, not people that might add to the demotivation, but connecting with
Sure.
others that are like-minded or kindred spirits, and like because there's, no matter how alone you are, chances are there's someone else that feels just as alone as you, and everyone has a sign that says make me feel special, and it's like that's personally uh, um, fills me up, is connected to people. On introverted people that might be struggling with motivation,
Mm,
it is important. I think they run the risk of feeling alone, and coupled with perhaps some discomfort with talking that out candidly with other people, that they might even just be feeling more and more and more alone. So
mm,
for people that are more introverted, um, I, I I would find that maybe that there's some other introverted people that you could connect with.
yeah.
Some introverted people are mad awkward, um, um, and some extroverted people are mad, like
Yeah.
overbearing
Yeah.
extroverted.
Yeah.
Uh, but usually talking to a manager, and just if you have someone you can trust, and that's a big deal too, is
Yeah. That's
taking that.
really interesting. I think where I think it gets overwhelming is like, okay, you find people to confide in that maybe feel similarly about the situation, but then you're at some point you're kind of like spinning your wheels, because it's like you feel this way, I feel this way, and like nothing's changing.
Yeah.
So I think going back to the frog, finding finding that one thing, or like the momentum thing that you can do to either improve, alleviate, or like change the situation. And then focusing on that, right? Like if I just come to you every week, like complaining about this thing, at some point you're just going to be like, fix the thing and stop complaining, right? So, and
And that,
that's overwhelming,
yep,
right?
you bring up a really, and that's a really, really good point. And that kind of, hey, we're feeling demotivated, let's come together. That can devolve the situation in a
Yeah,
bad
totally.
way. It
Yeah.
totally can. I think there's time for it. We're both feeling demotivated. Let's come together. Let's talk about it. We're both frustrated. I would say let's stay together, and together try to make it better.
Mm,
Let's, usually it's like a, hey, now this happened to me, and we're frustrated, and we leave frustrated, and we go back to our individual
right,
queues.
right, right, right.
What's most motivating to me, just the way I'm bent, is let's talk about it, but now let's
Yeah.
slide your chair over next to mine. Let's pair on this, what can we do? And let's
Yeah.
stick together is always really helpful for me. But I think because I am both, I do, now that I reflect more, I realize, working on just something else can be super rewarding. So like, hey, if there's one part of the work that is super demotivating, working on something else that I do find rewarding and interesting. And that's the thing, it's hard to describe this because it's going to be intrinsically interesting.
Right.
And or is it going to be intrinsically motivating? You kind of just feel that. I think that's the key. I do want to mention one huge help here. If you find yourself being really, really challenged at feeling intrinsically motivated, if you sit back and reflect for maybe just a minute or two, and you realize all of my life choices have almost always been, chasing the money,
Mm-hmm.
for example, or I don't want to do what this person did, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just all I'm reacting to the outside world as opposed to what actually motivates me. One way to intrinsically motivate you is to find and surround yourself with intrinsically motivated people.
Mm,
And
that's a great point.
that those kind of people, they just carry themselves in a way that fills you up with a passion, and it's really cool. If you don't have those people around you, there's plenty of people like that online. And
Totally.
when I say online, I don't mean like following the most popular influencers, because they might be extrinsically motivated. I'm saying this professor that I mentioned, I just discovered it because it was like a YouTube recommendation. It's like, oh man, the way this person carries themselves and talks is like, it really filled me up subconsciously with a passion for this.
Mm,
And that is so huge, because so much of our problem solving is done in the subconscious side.
right.
And if I am subconsciously demotivated, like that's gonna be
Right.
like
Right.
an
Right.
interview. If you can find yourself to be it, if there's nothing in all of my ranting, if anyone wants to take anything away, the one thing would be prioritize intrinsic motivation. And
Yeah.
however you can get there,
Yeah.
that is worth it.
Before I want to get a little controversial and talk about extrinsic motivation and being materialistic, but before I do that, I wanted to mention, like, piggybacking off of this, when a couple jobs I had to go, I was trying to be intrinsically motivated, but being shut down, and not able to grow, right? So you're like kind of just hitting walls, which sucks, right? Because you want to challenge yourself and you can't. So what I did was I went home every night and like picked an open source project and was just consistently contributing. And then I had the goal of becoming on the developer team, and then, which didn't happen. But I was contributing enough to where like the maintainers knew me by first name. It was cool. It was like a great experience, which then led to a better job, which led to a better job, which led to a better job. And like you meet, like you said, you meet so many interesting people and mentors online, one of which being Jordan, who I had on the podcast on the last episode.
Yeah.
I met him contributing to open source because of that situation. It's like, I'm not being intrinsically motivated, and now I have a really great relationship with someone interesting, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I hadn't thought about that too much. But the takeaway for me is being intrinsically motivated about something in your day can make all the difference.
Totally.
If it can't be during the 9 to 5,
Right.
but I can't wait for the 8 to 10 p.m. because I love what I do during that time. That's going to change your 9 to 5 so much.
Totally.
And, do what you can to improve the 9 to 5, but sometimes you can't. But sometimes what happens in that time, just the connections you make can make all the difference.
Totally. Awesome. Real quick, let's be materialistic. At what point, let's throw intrinsic motivation out the window and just focus on extrinsic. At what point should you be extrinsically motivated and questioning the current situation, right? Because like if the market values your time at X,
yeah,
and you're getting paid 40% of X, but you're intrinsically motivated, that's awesome. But I'm not saying money's everything, but I'm pointing at like, when should the alarms go off and be like, I need to think about this.
Yeah, that's a freaking good question. I and from just a little bit of our discussion, you probably picked up that this is a weakness of mine because I have a tendency to be a bit of an optimist and
Yeah.
focus on that side. There's 100% the time where you do need to speak up about things like that. And I do want to highlight that intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, just like your mind and your body, it's all connected. And it's not like these are two things and one is good and one is bad. I think this is more like these are two sides of these are two sides of a coin that do work together.
Right.
To some extent. I would say with the caveat of prioritizing intrinsic motivation, because that's your day-to-day how you live.
Right.
But you do gotta, I think I would still keep a high standard for what you're extrinsically, what you value. Sometimes it's money, but sometimes it could be of like sometimes it can be related to other people or code quality or something like that.
Yeah.
That's and I would say, yeah, you do keep the standard, but you don't let it discourage. Like that's the point. And when you have a standard and you're getting discouraged because nothing's ever meeting that, and like that's creates bitterness.
Totally.
And that's gonna just that's gonna blow up on you.
Yeah.
But if you could stay intrinsically motivated, positive, but you keep this standard still, there's something special there. Is like, okay, I'm motivated outside of this stuff. I'm still prioritizing it and moving towards it because I have personal goals or whatever, but something's keeping me going besides that. That means you're gonna last through the roller coasters of
right
stuff.
And
I don't
also,
know.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna. What do you? Does that kind of?
I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it also, I think having both, like you said, contributing to each other will give you the confidence to find intrinsic or maybe extrinsic motive changes, right? Within reason, right? Like, I think we have to check the situation and where we're at, right? Like, it's like I want to make $1 million like tomorrow. Okay, like chill, right? But yeah, there's like, yeah.
The one thing I would we're getting close to closing, and so I want to close with this warning. You are not intrinsically motivated if I like doing this because everyone then gives me likes and I like the way that makes me feel. Or I like doing this because that gives me a chance to get a bonus and I like having more money.
Right. Yeah.
Someone much smarter than me will be able to describe this, but there is a feeling of I like doing this just because I like doing this.
Yeah.
That is the goal.
Totally.
They work together because that can get worn down when extrinsically everything is not going right, and so that can get worn down. But the goal is you got to find the things I like doing just because I like doing. And even if so for me, I want to do things that even if everyone hated it, I would still want to do it.
Yeah.
So like I have a here's an example. I have my YouTube channel, the open source function.
Oh yeah.
It's funny for me to caveat here. Even if everyone hated it, let me bring up my YouTube channel. Uh, but it's so not professional, and it's so, if I was wanting it to, if I, it's not even attractive, like, and it's not even, it's probably not even helpful because it's so much, like, because we have like 3 hours of pair programming or something, like, but for me it was like, this is just something I want to do,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
that was what I wanted to do, and so that's what, and I've had, it's had to take a back seat because there's other things I wanted to do. I only have so much time, but I think as you look at the landscape of people you're inspired by, I think behind that passion, you'll see they're just doing something they just really like doing,
Yeah,
and
totally.
that's the reason. So
You always find time. That's a great point. Like before I started doing interviews with people, I was like making content of things I thought were valuable that I wish I knew when I was first starting out, but I hated it. Like I dreaded the day that I made those. And I was like, that's not worth my time. Like, I don't really care what comes of this. Like, I enjoy this so much, like interviewing people, talking, learning, um, that I look forward to these every week.
and that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I probably sound too idealistic, my that, and I kind of am. So I'm, yeah, that's
Awesome. I think that's a great place to leave it.
cool. Well, thanks for putting this together that we could talk. And
Yeah, always.
this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I find it, this is so personally rewarding, this software engineering activity,
Hmm.
for me, just because I like doing it. That I get excited for newcomers coming into the field and for encouraging people that have been in here for a long time that
Totally.
this is just fun. And
Totally.
that's awesome.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good
Well,
one, and we will be seeing you soon.
sounds good. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank
See ya.
you.